Hello everyone, my name's Ben and I'm going to talk to you about our new Mybo Edge compound bow. We spent a lot of time and energy developing this bow, and the goal of this bow was really to make the most shootable bow that we've ever done. Now I do know a lot of people claim to have the most shootable, tunable, if not fastest bow that you're ever going to need. So rather than just making claims, I'm going to go through the features of the bow, explain some of our design decisions, and hopefully it'll give you an understanding of what we're trying to achieve, and maybe even convince you to try the Mybo Edge. So the specifications for the bow, the numbers. The standard edge is going to run at 38.5 inch axle to axle length, brace height 7.5 inches, mass weight is going to be around about 4.9 pounds depending on the configuration. The speed 318 to 320 feet per second. We've got an impressive draw length range of 25 to 32 inches in half-inch increments across two cams and a range of modules. And for even less than 25-inch draw length, we are offering a short draw version, a shorter limb, which brings the bow at 35-inch axle to axle and drops the draw length down to a potential 23.5 inches. So a tremendous range of draw lengths. Poundage weight ranges from 30 to 60 pounds. Have a look on our website for all the detailed numbers there, but it gives you an idea of just how configurable and adaptable this bow is. Let's talk about the geometry of the bow, because the geometry of the bow has a direct effect on how a bow shoots and feels, so it's important we get that right. And one of the first decisions we have to make is whereabouts we put the nocking point in relationship to the center of the bow. And you might think that's an easy decision to make, but it's not actually. There's quite a few other factors to consider when deciding where to put the nocking point position. The logical place to put a nocking point position is in the direct center of the bow. We'll call that the mechanical center of the bow. The benefit to having a nocking point in the mechanical center is it promotes a level nocking point path as you draw the bow back, which in effect improves the tunability of your bow. It makes tuning easier when you've got a perfectly straight and level nocking point travel. But there is a downside to having it in the center of the bow, in regards that the grip then is moved below center. And we've been working with our shooting team on this for quite a bit, and what we're finding with, especially on the longer axle to axle length bows, is that when the grip is moved below center, it can negatively affect the aiming and the balance of the bow. So if you can visualize for a moment the grip being lower and right down by the limb pocket, it can become quite unwieldy and off balance. And it makes the stabilizer system, the arrangement of your stabilizers, very critical, if not even hypersensitive to getting the best aiming out of your bow that you can. So we've decided on the edge we wanted to move the grip up towards what we are calling the pressure centers of the bow. So the ideal position to start with, let me say where the ideal position would be to have the grip in the dead center and the nocking point in the dead center. But we can't do that because your arrow wants to pass through your hand. So what we've decided to do is split that position, where we've now raised the grip more towards center by the same amount off from center as the nocking point is above center, if that makes sense. So now the center of our bow now is across the arrow shelf. And we feel that is balancing the pressure centers, the grip pressure and the draw position related to your nocking point, to improve the aiming qualities of the bow. Now this isn't a night and day difference. We're not saying that by moving the grip up you'll suddenly be able to hold on the 10 ring if you couldn't even hold it in the gold to start with. It's not that at all, but it's one of those subtle improvements that we wanted to make to really optimize this bow. But there's a negative to that. The downside to having the nocking point now above center is that the nocking point doesn't travel in a parallel plane to the bow as you draw it back. It would want to raise as you draw it back, which can negatively affect the tuning. And one of our strengths about our bows has always been their tunability, and we just didn't want to compromise that. So we've engineered out that discrepancy in knocking point travel. We've made a different size top cam, which now lets out more bowstring as you draw it back and forces that knocking point to stay on that parallel path as you draw it back. So even though the knocking point is above centre, it draws in a perfectly level plane. So we feel we've got the best of both worlds here. We've got a better balanced position relating to the grip centres, but we haven't lost any of the tunability relating to that knocking point travel direction that can sometimes be lost by having a non-centre knocking point position. So all of those things combined are giving us a bow which we feel we've improved in some small degree that should hopefully show up when you try one of these bows. You should notice that small difference in balance and hopefully justify this change. Looking at the limbs we have on the bow and also the limb angle, we'll discuss that in a moment, but when making a longer axle length bow, we didn't really want to go down the route of having a disproportionately long riser with small parallel limbs on them. There was a benefit to parallel limbs in regards to lower vibration and lower recoil, but we wanted to move away from that. We think there is a value in having feedback in the shot, and the traditional limb angle gives the bow a direction when you shoot it. You can feel it, not in a negative way in regards to high vibration, but in a way that helps you learn from the quality of the shot that you made. It's got a punch to it, a direction towards the target. I mean, the arrow has already left the bow by that stage, so it's not about that feedback making the bow shoot better, but it's about you appreciating the quality of the shot that you made because you could feel how the bow felt and acted after the shot. We have a split limb, wide stance split limb. We've been using a wide stance split limb for many years and are very happy with how that increases the rigidity of the limb. But we took it a step further with the profile of the limb that we're using now. The limb tips are incredibly rigid. So for a split limb bow, it's quite common that if you was to grab hold of the bottom cam on your bow or any of the cams, you can usually rotate or twist the limbs fairly easy. They're usually quite flexible. These ones are extremely rigid, really solid. So that should give you good confidence. There won't be excessive limb oscillation, and they're not prone for cam lean at full draw because of the rigid nature of these limbs. You'll also notice the limb shape. At full draw, we're utilising the length of the limb. It's a nice even flex throughout the limb. Got a lovely shape to it. Just some refinements and optimisations for our limb shape there. When we talk about shootability and forgiveness, they're terms that are thrown around very easily. But one of the direct factors that affects shootability and forgiveness is the torque that you can put into a bow. And when I say torque, what I mean is the left-right waggle of a bow. Some bows are very sensitive to it, where it will take very little pressure to turn it offline, and it can cause quite bad horizontal grouping. So what we wanted to achieve with our bow was a system at full draw that if you tried to turn it offline, you'll notice immediately how much more rigid and stiff and difficult this bow is to turn offline. And that makes the bow more forgiving to bad hand position and errors that might creep in the horizontal plane in the grouping on your target. So by reducing that, in turn, those little improvements will help improve your shooting. Let's talk about the riser. This is machined from a solid billet of 7075 alloy. The extra tensile strength that we gain from 7075 really allows us to skeletonize this riser, remove as much weight as possible while not compromising the integrity of the bow. It's polished anodized. Got a nice range of colours. You have to have a look on our website to see the range of colours that we do. One of the main features, and a very critical feature, is the grip area. We think we've done something pretty special with the grip here. You will notice that the grip has an angle on the left side if you're a right-handed archer, which promotes the correct hand placement to give that strong bow arm position, but without starting to roll off the side. So the angle is an assisting dimension to help with your hand placement. You notice it's tapered from the base running up into the throat. The throat of the grip is rounded fully at the back, and even on the front we've got an extra relief for the front finger that wants to roll up on the arrow shelf. There's extra relief there. On the underside we've got a cutaway for the thumb knuckle clearance, because quite often the thumb knuckle wants to press on the underside of the riser, causing a hot spot there. So now that's cut away and gives good clearance. And we've even added some texturing on the edges just to give it a nice tactile feel. We have plenty of stabilizer weight positions. You'll notice we've got the regular front stabilizer mount, stainless steel bushing. We have a rear mount below the grip and a low mount behind the pocket, so you can experiment to your heart's content with any stabilizer arrangement that you fancy. Little touch as well, notice we have Union Jack. We're very proud that this bow is made in Britain. So they'll by standard, they'll all go out with a Union Jack flag on there, but we do know and understand that not everyone wants to use a Union Jack flag on the bow. So we are more than happy to print your own flag of choice, and that'll be done free of charge for you. For anybody that has a edge bow, we'll do that for you. Moving on to the cams, obviously a very important feature of any compound bow. Very proud of these, took a long time to develop these. We've got a symmetrical twin cam. They are slightly different shapes, top and bottom, and that's to allow for the non-center knocking point position that I mentioned earlier. It still delivers a perfectly straight and level knocking point travel, and that's been engineered into the shape of the cams to maintain that tunability, which has always been a very strong feature of our bows. You'll notice how the string track is in the center of the cam on these bows. If you were to line up the string through the middle of the bow, you will see that the string track is in the center of the limbs, and we find that reduces the limb oscillation after the shot compared to an off-center string position, because the impact is straight down the middle. You'll also notice the wide, or the width of these cams are significantly wider than most cams, and that spreads the load across the axle in conjunction with that wide limb stance, maintains a very rigid top end limb position. But one of the main features of that rigidity at the top is an oversized axle, 6mm diameter. The industry standard is 3/16, so we're outside of the standard, but we found the 3/16 axles flexing. And you can often see that on bows if you look at the top and bottom limbs. Sometimes there's a frown or a smiley face depending on the direction that the axle has flexed. Stainless steel bearings, of course, all sealed on the inside. To change the draw length on our bows, we are using a replaceable module system. Very easy to do, 2 screws, take them out. You don't need a bow press to do this. The module slides off, new one slides on. Now we've moved away from the rotating module for this particular bow because we found that the replaceable module system gives us a tightness of control over the force draw curve, the let off, and the feel of the stop at full draw. And that control allows us to make every draw length setting through this cam feel consistent and exactly as we wanted it to be. A rotating module, depending on the design, can sometimes have quite a significant difference in feel from the short setting to the long setting. And I'm not just talking about draw length, I mean the actual force draw curve, the sponginess of the stop changes, the let off varies. So although there may be a little more inconvenience that you may not have the immediate module to hand for you to change the draw length, we do feel that inconvenience is outweighed by the benefits that we are offering with this modular arrangement. Another feature that I'd like to show you is our adjustable stop that we have on the cams. We've been using it for a few years, many years in fact. It's one of the really great features of these bows, that you can customize the feel at full draw in very subtle, small amounts to just how you would like it to feel. For example, this stop here is adjustable, where if it's in its flat maximum position, it gives a high let off, quite a deep valley feel, around about 75% let off. And then if you was to push that further forward, it lowers the let off down to around 65%, gives a more aggressive feel to the back end at full draw. And you'll probably find that your optimum position is somewhere in between, but it gives you the option to find that position for yourself and not be limited in a fixed dimension of a cam which you have no control over. Beyond that as well, we can change the tension of the stop at full draw. And what I mean by that is that you've probably heard the term sponginess at full draw, or how rock hard a wall is. Now, these cams do give a very firm wall, a very positive wall, but some archers like a little more give at full draw, and that give comes from the flex of the cable. So as the cable rolls around the cam at full draw and it hits full draw, the cable contacts whatever stopping mechanism there is on the cam, and as you pull harder onto that stop, the cable flexes over the stop. So the further away that stop is from the axle position, the harder the stop. The nearer the axle, the softer the stop becomes. So although this isn't a transformative feel, it doesn't suddenly go from ultra spongy to ultra hard. It's on a scale of, they're all very firm positions, but if you was to move it in a more forward position towards the axle, you'll detect a little bit more flex in the back end of the bow. And again, it's features like these that do allow an element of customization that you can't normally find. One thing you'll notice about the bow is just how tight and solid it feels to shoot. The string tension is rigid, the cables are rigid. There's no need for a string suppressor. The string isn't going to follow through and hit your arm or your wrist. We include SVL Super Quads as standard, just for a little bit of added dampening. We use a AAE slippery slide as standard. That's not just a standard plastic slider. And we want to maintain that free movement of the cables backwards and forwards. The cable guard is adjustable for clearance, and it's secured with a double clamp both sides for a rock solid lockdown. Strings and cables. We've got two options for our bow. But first of all, I wanted to mention that quite a lot of archers are under the impression that when you buy a new bow, one of the first things they do is they take the strings and cables off, throw them away, and put a set of custom strings and cables on the bow. Well, I wanted to make it clear on our bow, we are using top-end strings and cables. The standard strings and cables that will come fitted to the edge are the Solo Flex strings and cables. We use BCY X material. They are manufactured under tension, they're served under tension, there's no peak rotation. These are high-end strings and cables, so whatever you think, don't think you've got to throw these away as soon as you get them. They're very, very good, otherwise we wouldn't be putting them on the bow. They'll be coming in a range of colours. These will all be the standard options that can go on a bow, and we're really happy to be using Solo Flex strings and cables. There's a second option. If you really wanted to customize to a considerable amount, we're using also Rain strings and cables as an option for you. And he can make any combination of colors. It does a beautiful pinstripes as well. Any material that you want, any strand count. So there really is no excuse to have to go away and have secondary strings and cables made. They're all very, very good. So taking a look at the limb pocket. Limb pockets are often an underrated and overlooked component of the bow. It's actually a very important component of the bow. It's holding your limbs in place, so it needs to be repeatable and precise. And that's what we've achieved with the pocket. We've kept it very simple, but actually maintain the tolerance and the function perfectly. It's attached with a high tensile stainless steel bolt through a cross dowel in the riser. And that bolt is encapsulated in a half moon rocker. So in all poundage positions, the limbs are at the correct angle and the bolt is at 90 degrees to the riser. The limbs fit in nice and simply, slot straight in, high tolerance, very secure, and the rockers are free floating on the end, so that allows the limb to flex through its natural movement during the shot cycle. So what we've achieved here is a simple and repeatable limb pocket to aid the accuracy and consistency of your bow. One of the unique features of the Edge is our limb pocket adjustment mechanism. It's a lateral limb adjustment mechanism. And that's an interesting feature and has quite a bit of value for a very small amount of people. 99% of the archers out there will shoot the bow in the standard configuration that we will ship the bow in. There will be no adjustment required. However, there is that 1% of archer that through their technique or their influence on the bow creates a situation which turns the bow and causes slight horizontal paper tear tuning issues. And it's nothing to do with gripping the bow or twisting it in that direction. It's an inherent difficulty that some archers experience that can't be easily changed from their technique point of view. So what we've introduced into the bow is a mechanism to neutralize that for that 1% of archers. And what it does, it changes the angle of the limb in a horizontal direction. In effect, it moves the string and the tips of the limbs left and right, which in turn moves the string left and right through the center line of the bow. So that repositioning of the center point of the string through the bow can change how that bow tunes and can be matched to that archer's idiosyncrasy. Again, just to restate, that's not something really you experiment with, and we're more than happy to help with our support team that if you think you're one of that 1% that's having difficulty tuning, we've got a solution for you. And how it works is the limb pocket is mounted separately through an extra component here. And that component is fitted onto the end of the riser. There's a dowel pin. There's no way that that can move. That's a very secure position. But we offer a range of blocks which have a different horizontal position. And that rotation horizontally, which moves those limbs left and right, can influence the tune of the bow. So that's quite a unique feature to help out that 1% that do struggle to tune the bows. Well, there you go. That was the Mybo Edge. I hope you enjoyed my rundown. Thank you for your time, and I really do hope you try one soon. Thanks.